A rough weekend for the Hawkeye men and why this Iowa women's basketball team can make a deep run come March Madness. All today, Locked on Hawkeye.
You are Locked on Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked on Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked on Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. Hit subscribe while you're watching on YouTube, or if on the audio side, 5-star reviews helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode of Locked on Hawkeyes is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. We got a busy show, a lot of basketball to get into today. Spring season has begun and getting deep into it for the Iowa baseball team, the Iowa softball team. Talk about that a little bit as well. The Friday night disaster against Northwestern for the Iowa men. But we start today on a positive note, and it was a second half pull away for the Iowa women yesterday against Wisconsin. You know, as we've talked about this women's basketball team here over the last month, and a February that's now morphed, into March, we've seen a team that has made the improvements. You know, the 5-game losing streak was incredibly disappointing. There was a lot of frustration that was there of what they just couldn't get over the hump, right? How many close losses that they have, how many times that we've looked at this squad and we're wondering, what if? And the murmurs that were out there, did Iowa make the right move with Gian Jensen, handing the job to her after the retirement of Lisa Bluter? And it was silly, but that's the conversation that happens when you're in the midst of a 5-game losing streak. And as we look back at that losing streak, because it's going to be a differentiator. This team really, when you look at them resume-based, when you look at the totality of what they've done throughout the course of the season, this wasn't a 5-game losing streak where I was getting blown out every single time, where it was just ugly and they were playing awful basketball. That really wasn't the case. What it was is we saw them defensively, I think, take a little bit of a step back until the Oregon game, but also there were just those coin flip games, and sometimes they're going to go your way, and sometimes they're not. It was a team that was learning how to win. It was a team still learning in early January how to play together with the new faces out there, with Lucy Olsen and what we've seen out of her recently and the big step forward. We saw a team that just wasn't clicking. Yet they were right there. They lose to a Maryland team. It's really good at home. Just a game that they couldn't get over the hump on that Sunday. Remember it vividly because I was in the hospital with my daughter. We were watching the game together. She had walking pneumonia. The game against Illinois, now that was a bad one, and it was just offensively they were bad, but we saw some improvements. Against Indiana, another one, they just couldn't get over the hump. Same thing with Nebraska. They blow the late lead in that one. The Oregon game had a big lead and lost by a point on the road. Then they turned it around. And though the winning streak came to an end at 6 games, the loss to Ohio State, great comeback at the end to force overtime, just ran out of gas. Against UCLA, you're right there with what many people consider the best team in the country. You beat what a lot of other people consider the best team in the country and USC. And then you go on the road, you throttle Michigan, just absolutely pulverize the Wolverines, and then finish up and pull away in the second half against Wisconsin. It's what they've done over the last month plus now changes the equation for this team. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we saw yesterday against Wisconsin and the senior day festivities, which are always great. But before we get into that, I want to talk more big picture about this Hawkeye women's team because there is a hope. You know, we don't see a whole lot of appearances from teams outside of the top 4 in the Sweet 16. This is not like the men's tournament. There are no St. Peter's. And yes, I know a million years ago that Harvard beat Stanford as 16-1. The seeding was also ridiculous in that tournament, as had been for the long time in women's basketball. But that aside, as we've seen upsets, but it's incredibly rare compared to the men's game where we see double-digit seeds seemingly every single year in the Sweet 16. You don't see that in the women's game. And the reason is that gap between the top-level teams and everybody else is pretty significant. And this Iowa team has proven this year that they can hang with those teams. And I get it. To be fair, both the USC and UCLA games were at home. But this is a Big Ten this year that could have as many as 13 teams in the NCAA tournament. They haven't been blown out, and they've beaten solid teams. Go back to the non-conference. If maybe, and there's people out there that believe that the Big Ten is not as good as what the metrics are showing. I disagree, but there are people that will say that. If that's the case, go back and look what Iowa did in the non-conference. And short of turning the ball over 30 times against Tennessee and blowing a lead in that one, they dominate Iowa State. They got wins against solid teams. Drake, Vatek, Toledo. Kansas is disappointed a little bit. But they got all these wins, BYU, in the non-conference portion of the schedule, and then what they did on top in the Big Ten. Now, it stinks. The way the bracket sets up, it's not fun by any means. And we'll get to that momentarily. But let's take a peek back at what we saw yesterday, tied up at the half, and just a game where things were clicking. You could tell maybe it was what happened early on, knowing what was still to come that senior day. And Jan Jensen said it after the game. Coach Jensen mentioned that when you have senior day, you just don't know how teams are going to respond, what it's going to look like. And this one, it was different. It was a team that just took a little bit longer than you want to get their feet underneath them. But Lucy Olsen was outstanding again. And to see what she has turned into and the kind of leader that she was, how great was it to see her mom? You saw those pictures? Talk about a lot of DNA from mom's side. Boy, they look like a spitting image of her mother. But she was excellent once again. Just love what we see out of Lucy Olsen out there. Hannah Stuelke, maybe her most effective game, possibly of the season. Not just the double-double, the 15 rebounds, but having 9 on the offensive glass, that was outstanding. And here's the other part, and I think this is one that you have to kind of file away. She was 7-7 at the free throw line. And if you've been following this team, you know about some of the struggles that Hannah Stuelke has had at the free throw line this season. Not the case yesterday afternoon. It gets it done. So 21 points, 15 rebounds, 9 offensive rebounds. Oh, she also chipped in 4 steals and 3 assists. Talk about a complete effort. That's what they got out of Hannah Stuelke. And when you get that Hannah Stuelke, you're in really good shape. Now, Hannah's going to be back for another year. Taylor McCabe, come back for another year. Kyler Feuerbach is the interesting one. We talked about this last week. Now, what do you do with Feuerbach? You saw it again yesterday. She had a couple of huge defensive plays. When Wisconsin was hanging around, when Wisconsin looked like maybe they're going to gain an advantage. Boy, she's just so good on the defensive end. And I really think we know that Feuerbach's always been a solid defender, a good athlete. But what we've seen out of her is going back to that USC game where she really bothered Juju Watkins. I think the confidence just built that, yes, you are a lockdown defender against anybody. And whoever the best player, the best perimeter player on the floor is, every single time, Feuerbach, you're going to take that. That's what we got with Gabby Marshall, and it's what we're getting now with Kylie Feuerbach. And she has another year of eligibility. If she chooses to use that, we'll probably get to that after the season concludes. And she knocks down a couple of three-pointers. Mentioned Lucy, outstanding once again. But we got to talk about Cynthia Fulcher. In her final game at Carver-Hawkeye Arena, just another one. The tenacity, the toughness, the physicality that she plays with, undersized, but always ready for the fight. And that's what you get with Cynthia Fulcher. The consummate Hawkeye, do everything possible to win. Do everything that you need. That's what you get from Cynthia Fulcher. She is a player that you love to have on your team. Need a big three-pointer? She's there. Need a steal? Absolutely. Rebound? She's one of the best. Southside toughness, she's got it. She absolutely, no doubt about it, is going to be a player that we're going to talk about for a really long time. Because she doesn't score the points, she's not going to be first team all Big Ten. She's not going to be an All-American, but she's what being a Hawkeye is. You need these type of players. And to see her grow and morph throughout the last couple of years and turn into the leader that she is this season with a completely new group, a lot of credit needs to go to Cynthia Fulcher. Job well done for a Fulcher and the Hawkeye women's basketball team. And then off the bench, how about Addison O'Grady? She was outstanding. Again, getting that positioning, 5 of 5 from the floor. Liked what we saw out of the freshman. Stremlo had a couple of really nice plays out there. Same Ava Hayden coming into the game. AJ Edinger, another senior. Got to mention the other senior, AJ, that got her opportunity to get on the floor late in that one and got the ovation as well as she came off the floor. Slow start, pull away in the second half, do what you're supposed to do. And now we get the goofiness, right? That is the rematch going up again against Wisconsin for a second time. So that'll come up on Wednesday. I mean, quick turnaround. And because of that, I don't think it's going to be overly difficult. I don't think you're going to see anything that you're overly concerned about. This Wisconsin team, they got some players. You saw that. But this is still another one that you absolutely should win and punch your ticket. So the way that it sets up, Iowa will play approximately 7:30 on Wednesday evening against the Badgers. Iowa is the number 11 seed. That doesn't paint the full picture, though. Tiebreakers didn't go Iowa's way. And you saw what they did just a week ago against the number 5 seed, Michigan. And of course, you have the number 1 seed, USC, that they beat. The number 2 seed that they're a bucket away from beating. And the 3 seed, Ohio State, that they lost to on the road in overtime. I was right there with all these teams. I was right there with this squad. You know there's going to be a big contingent that's going to be in Indianapolis. And how about the extra fans that Iowa maybe has built in Indy with 22 over there? I think you're going to see a good Hawkeye crowd. Now, it's not like it's going to, like it was a year ago up in Minnesota where it was 90% Hawkeye fans. You're not going to see that, but there's going to be a big contingent, no doubt. With the win against Wisconsin on Wednesday, Iowa moves on then. They will take on Michigan State in the second round. Michigan State, the number 6 seed. That game will be played. That'll be a late night game, probably about 8 o'clock. You're looking at the tip-off for that one on Thursday evening against Michigan State. You go back to the first time that Iowa faced off against Michigan State. That was a game where Iowa let a lead slip away. Yeah, stop me if you've heard that again. This Iowa team, different than the one that played Michigan State earlier this season. I think they'd be excited about getting a rematch. Now, if we're talking about winning too, beating Wisconsin, beating Michigan State, we move on then to the quarterfinals. Still only the quarterfinals, where third-seeded Ohio State likely would await. Ohio State would be sitting there on that part of the bracket. With the win then, maybe UCLA, could be Illinois. A lot of possibilities that could be playing if Iowa gets to the semifinals. Remember, a lot of success at this even before Caitlin Clark. Iowa women's basketball has had a lot of success in the Big Ten tournament. They're going to be ready to go. I love the path that they have at minimum to win a couple of games and continue to improve their NCAA tournament resume. Speaking of that resume, updates all over the place. Took a look at a couple of different places. I know a lot of people go to Charlie Crean with ESPN. He does a really good job over there with that, but want to just get a couple of different looks. I went over to CBS Sports. They have women bracketology up. They had Iowa as the top 7 seed, the best 7 seed, if you will, meaning one spot away from the 6 seed line. We talked about that path on the 6 seed, how much better it is to be a 6 seed and potentially making that run into the Sweet 16. Herhoopstats.com also had one. Thought this was interesting. They had Iowa taking on, going to the Fort Worth Regional. That's where TCU awaits. TCU, the regular season champion in the Big 12, the number 3 seed. And who plays for TCU? Haley Van Lith. Yeah, that Haley Van Lith. LSU. Louisville before that. And Iowa could have the possibility for the 3rd straight year of knocking Haley Van Lith out of the NCAA tournament. Woo! That could be some good theater in the round of 32. Long way to go, and a lot can change, and a lot will change before we get to that point. Just thought that was an interesting nugget. Well, as good as things were, certainly in the second half, and the good vibes that are surrounding the Iowa women's basketball program, the same cannot be said, unfortunately, for the men's team. We'll take a look back at the loss against Northwestern over the weekend. What's next and what needs to be done just for Iowa to qualify for the Big Ten tournament. We'll do that as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Roy. Hawkeye fans, you ever wish you could directly support your favorite Iowa athletes and be part of their journey? Now you can with Roy, the NIL app that puts fans in control. Before Roy, NIL deals were often handled behind closed doors, and fans like you didn't have a clear way to directly support the players you love. Now with Roy, you can make a real impact and feel closer to the athletes representing the Hawkeyes. With Roy, you get to choose a player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, get exclusive content straight back from the athletes that you back. And the best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. So it's a risk-free way to show your support and make your voice heard. Hawkeye fans, we take a look at this stretch run. How about some of those players we talked about on the women's basketball team, the men's basketball team, whatever it is? You want to see guys come back for another season? This is an opportunity for you to help with that. Download the Roy app now and from the App Store and start backing Hawkeye athletes the way they deserve with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. Trent Conda back with you once again, Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. All right, let's get back into it, and let's jump to the disappointing side of things. That is the Iowa men, as the slog continues throughout the course of this season. Another one, a very winnable game on Friday night, and I think that's where probably some frustration lies. If Iowa just went into Northwestern, just got beat because Northwestern played well, you throw up your hands and say, okay, Northwestern didn't play that well. Certainly not offensively. And Iowa just couldn't get it done. It's just so rare that we see Iowa play this poorly on the offensive end of the floor. And as we've looked back and we've talked about this squad, and since the injuries have hit and they started to add up, and you just see the construction of this team, you know that you have to get a ton out of Josh Dix and Peyton Sanford to win basically every night. Both of them. There just isn't enough offensive firepower outside of those two guys to be there. And he got a good game from Drew Thelwell. Working his way back from injury. Played 33 minutes in the game on that gimpy ankle. The most minutes that we've seen since going back to January. That's how far back you have to go when Drew Thelwell was able to play that much because of the ankle injury. And Thelwell knocked down a couple of threes, got going. 4 3-pointers overall in the game. He was outstanding. 3 assists, doing what you needed to. But you didn't get it out of Peyton Sanford. 3 of 13 from the floor. 0 of 4 from three-point range. 3 of 12 from Josh Dix. And we can go deeper into this one, but it's as simple as that. If those guys aren't playing well, you're not going to win. So we're down to 2. And in these final 2 games, Iowa has to win 1 at minimum. Will they be able to do it? We'll get into that momentarily. Brock Harding off the bench, 7 assists. I moved it well. Just there's so many times he gets stuck. He gets caught. It's frustrating to watch at times. Price Sanford finished with 8. Bronze continues to give them good minutes. And that's, I guess, one thing that you look at in a component that does excite you is what we've seen out of Bronze and kind of finishing off his career. Riley Mulvey got in there, got 3 rebounds in 3 minutes, but that's it. So it's a loss. Traore looks lost out there. Just can't find a way. They didn't play well. And this was of the final 3. A lot of people believe the most winnable of the 3. The way that I saw it is all 3 of these final 3 games were the same. I mean, in terms of odds percentages, they were all Iowa about a 5.5 point underdog in them. Michigan State comes to town. I do wonder if there might be a little look ahead. We'll get to that on Thursday when we preview the matchup against the Spartans. But yeah, overall, just a disappointing night for a very disappointing team. If you would have told me before the year that this team was going to miss the Big Ten tournament, I would have said you're absolutely crazy. I thought they were going to be on the right side of the bubble. I thought we were going to see and take what we saw from a year ago. They were going to build on it. They were going to be back in the NCAA tournament. And well before Owen Freeman shut it down, we saw that this team wasn't that. And it has just continued. You saw the devastation, the hurt, the frustration from Peyton Sanford after the game. Their hopes of not just being an NCAA tournament team, but a Big Ten tournament team. It's real out there. And now there's a very real possibility that Iowa will see their season conclude basically as early as anybody. Come 1:30 on Sunday afternoon, March 9th, this thing could be over. And when it's over, March 9th, after the Big Ten tournament, Beth Getz has a decision of what she's going to do with this program. A fan base that is checked out, a team that is frustrating to watch, a style of play that can be entertaining, at least offensively, but isn't there anymore. And it's not connecting with the Hawkeye fan base. You're seeing the fans have checked out. So we have senior day. And Peyton Sanford, we've talked about it, Peyton a ton. If it ends, it will end in Carver. They're not going to get a home NIT game. When it ends, Thursday night against Michigan State, in front of 5, 6, maybe 7,000 fans. It's crazy. We're talking best case scenario is a building half full, but that's where we are. So I'm going to take my son over to his first Hawkeye game since he's a little kid. And he's still a little kid. He's 5, but 5.5, he likes to remind me. But I want to see the environment one other time. Got over there for the Iowa State game. Environment was fun. It was a good environment. And it helped that Iowa played well until the final 5 minutes of the game. But what this is going to look like, because not just the seniors, Sanford, Bronze, a few other guys, Felwell, obviously. It's also going to be a very real possibility that this is it for Fran. And I understand how it's gone the last couple of years. I understand the frustration because I have it too. Wanting more out of this program. I bet a Fran defender. As much as I complain about a few little things, the 2 foul participation thing drives me absolutely batty. Late game situations, not using timeouts because Fran is so dang good at drawing up plays. I just wish he'd do it more in late game situations. But all those things aside, Fran McCaffrey brought this program back from the doldrums. And a job where a lot of people didn't think he was going to take it. The Iowa job was looked at terribly back 15 years ago. And he took the job and he did a good job. Not a great job. Was never able to get over the hump, but did a good job. Returning Iowa basketball back to respectability. Going from a laughing stock and becoming a solid program. And there were hiccups. There was frustration. But he did a lot. And if it is the end, I personally would like to see a good send-off. If this is it, and I believe that it is going to be it, it'd be good one final time to get the arena revved up. Michigan State is going to be playing for likely a Big Ten regular season title on Sunday against Michigan. And because of that, could there be a look ahead? No, Iowa's played well against Michigan State here recently. Now, this is an incredibly deep Michigan State team, but crazy things happen in college basketball and certainly on the road. I don't believe that Iowa's going to win. I'm not going to bet on Iowa to win, but there's always a chance. Let's hope it's a good one in Carver. And let's hope for one time this season that the fans can really show up and give Peyton Sanford and the rest of the seniors a good send-off, and maybe with it, Coach McCaffrey. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Not just basketball going on. We got a few other things to get into. The NFL Draft Combine has been just wrapping up with it. Had some Hawkeye players. We're going to talk about that one a little bit more tomorrow. But do want to talk about the baseball team the week ahead on the basketball front. We'll do that as we continue on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. That's right. Don't have to get them in before. In-game live betting, it's great. And if you miss the opening tip-off or want to just bet on a comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. That's right, not just pre-game for same-game parlays, live in-game as well. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment more exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I feel like I never miss my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Trent Condon back one last time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us here today. We're with you each and every day, talking Hawkeyes, whatever is going on in the world of Iowa sports. We got you covered on that front. Well, speaking of that, we got a little bit coming up tomorrow that we are going to get into on the front of the NFL Draft Combine. Scott Docterman's going to join us. We'll get Doc's thoughts as he was in Indianapolis for that one. But do want to begin today's program talking about the spring sports that are getting started and start with the Hawkeye baseball team. You know, last year, of course, had a tremendous preseason build up to what that squad was going to be, what they were going to look like, and possibility of that team not just being an NCAA tournament team. There was talk of them potentially even hosting in the regionals. That didn't happen. Bullpen was a struggle early on. Well, things are off to a rough start again this season. And going into the weekend series against Washington State, we looked at the squad and thought, all right, potentially. Things didn't go real well, but you go back to last weekend and the opener against South Florida. They lose in extra innings to Notre Dame, 2-1. Beat Stetson and UMBC by shutout like something's cooking. And then it's Washington State. Of course, the Pac-12 is no more. So they play this neutral site series down in Texas. You're thinking, at minimum, Iowa win the series, go 3-1, maybe even get the sweep. Instead, they lose 3 out of 4. They turned around and got a 10-inning win, a 10-run win in the finale on Sunday, but that's not a good look. Now, they're scheduled to play Wednesday, but with the impending weather, don't think that matchup with St. Thomas is going to happen before Big Ten play begins on the road next week at Rutgers. What's happened here in the non-conference? Iowa, again, has painted a picture, and this is a reality for most Big Ten teams, but they're going to have to win the Big Ten tournament to be an NCAA tournament team. And they'll finish up against a good Oregon team. They got that series against a top 10 ranked Oregon State team coming in, the second to last series of the year. That should be fun at Principal Park here in Des Moines. But overall, a lot of work that needs to be done. Need to get those bats going a little bit more, but the pitching, that was a more surprising angle after what we saw really in the beginning of the season. What happened against Washington State, just a kind of an eye-opener over the weekend, and now a long way back to kind of build up that resume for the Iowa baseball team. On the other side, the softball team, off to a pretty decent start overall. Now, this is going to be a new look for all the Big Ten teams, obviously with the addition of the West Coast schools. And baseball, yeah, that's one thing, and that's going to help the league overall. But what you're also adding now with Oregon, a really good team. They're 20-1 this year. With UCLA, always a power. This could be a fun year. Well, I was off to a really good start, at least record-wise. They're 13-5 on the year. 13-5. Their RPI is 91 and shows you they haven't exactly taken on the who's who. When they've taken on Tennessee, Texas Tech, these are teams ranked in the top 25. Over the weekend against Arkansas, it hasn't gone real well. Haven't been able to get much offense going, but against other teams, they're playing at a high level. Got a win against Illinois. That won't count in the Big Ten standings. That was happening down in Fayetteville, down at the Arkansas Classic this past weekend. But overall, good start for the squad. Like to see that, and would love to see Iowa softball kind of turn back into a thing, right? It was so good when I was going to school at Iowa. Gail Blevins had that program humming at a high level. Really, really fun to watch, an entertaining brand of softball that they played. Like to see that come back. And the Big Ten now, it's much different than it is on the baseball side of things, where there's real possibilities. You can build things. Speaking of taking our kids, I told you I'm taking my son over to his first Iowa basketball game. I'm going to take my daughter to her first softball game coming up in April when they take on Nebraska. We're playing a tournament in Iowa City, and they're going to be going on Sunday to watch the Hawks and the Huskers, who are also ranked in the top 25. Going to be a really, really good Big Ten this year, and good start to the softball team. So Wednesday, we have getting ready for the matchup against Wisconsin in the women's Big Ten tournament. We have the Thursday matchup against Michigan State. Possibility that we're going to have 2 games going on at the same time with the Hawkeye men and women on Thursday. Plus, it's Big Ten. Going to get together with Zach Sako from Locked On Nittany Lions. We're going to preview the Big Ten wrestling tournament that's coming your way this week as well. Super busy. Great time of year. Glad to have you aboard with us. It's March Madness, and we have you covered on all angles on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. That'll do it for today. We have you on the Hawkeye front. And don't forget, you can also listen to all your favorite teams, NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, all covered on the Locked On Network, plus Craig Sheeman hooking you up on Locked On Big Ten. I'm Trent Condon. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.